Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Advice from a Call Center Geek, the call center and contact center podcast, where we try to give you some actionable items to take back in your contact center, improve the overall center, improve the agent engagement, hopefully improve the customer experience as well. My name is Tom Laird. I am the CEO of Expedia Interaction Marketing. Expedia is a rapidly growing 500, 600 seat call center outsourcer located here in Pennsylvania. How's everybody doing? Thank you again for joining. I'm going to get right into today's episode. I think we have a ton to cover. I have had a lot of you guys text me, email me, talk about, more technology, getting into AI, conversational AI, and also talk about more sales, right? We're very customer service oriented. So I think today we're going to kind of hit both those out of the park. So with us today is Kreg Daly and Craig Peeler, who are the CRO and the CEO of Aktify, which is a conversational AI organization. So Craig's, I'm going to just kind of throw it to you guys. Maybe if you want to do a quick intro, talk about Aktify a little bit, and we'll get into kind of an overall conversational AI conversation.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Tom, for having us on the show. I'll just start with a little bit of my background. I came up as a media producer. I started life as an audio engineer, and that turned into an event marketing software platform. We started getting into AI, and I saw the power of it manifest itself there. And then I saw an even bigger opportunity applying a lot of what we had learned driving ticket sales and what we could do with AI to sales funnels. And so a couple of years ago, I started Aktify, and we were plugging along, and we got a couple of good strategic deals. And then just recently we brought on Craig Daly, and he's doing everything we used to do times 10, and it's just really starting to catch on fire. So really excited to be on the show because I think it's highly relevant to the audience you have and the solutions you're providing to the industry.
Yep.
Awesome.
Echoing his sentiment, Tom, thanks for having us. My name is Craig Daly, our Chief Revenue Officer. I spent the last 10 years within some SaaS companies, taking them from small single $1 million digit revenue numbers to some of these larger $1 billion acquisitions, but they've been heavily focused in consumer experience. Most notably is a group called Qualtrics, and then my last company, Podium, but they were hyper focused on a lot of the interactions and trying to drive great experiences. And when I linked up with Craig, and he kind of conveyed what they were doing with conversation AI, it played exactly into what we were always trying to solve for. So a really good marriage there.
Yeah, and can you guys talk about that? I mean, in our pre-calls, the website and the product that you have is really cool. Just give a quick kind of once over on what you guys do, the problem that you're trying to solve, and how you guys are kind of really focused on using AI.
Yeah, there's two sides. I'll cover half of it, and we'll have Daly cover the other half. But I think of it from the consumer standpoint. That customer experience, that customer journey. I think of a lot of very frustrating experiences I've had when I've tried to get a hold of somebody. I'm ready to buy a product, and just the phone tag, the back and forth, whether it's customer service or sales or whatever, it's a very frustrating experience for a consumer. And that's where I wanted to apply a lot of the attendee philosophies that we applied to event marketing and event registration, check-in. All those things I think apply to what we're doing with sales. But the other side is what we're doing for call centers.
And I very much see it through the business lens. I look at it's impeccable, or it's critical for these organizations to drive really strong experiences, but how do you do that at mass scale when there's millions of conversations at once? There's so many voice of the customer programs and initiatives around the experience itself. But doing that in a truly massive scale, like a lot of these Fortune call centers have, is a really hard challenge. I think that's where there's this interesting crossroad of conversational AI to solve for it.
No, that's awesome. And I think that's a good lead into kind of the first question or some of the things that I'm really interested in. I think the audience will be interested in is where do you guys see, AI right now? And specifically, I guess, building on the conversational AI structure. And then, can you kind of talk about that in one bucket and maybe get into kind of the sales process or how you see AI kind of helping to solve that problem, but kind of give your overall of kind of where do you see the technology right now?
Yeah, when I was looking at the industry, I saw people talking about AI. It's kind of a fast and loose term.
Right.
Thrown around there. We're AI-driven sales. But when you dig in, it was usually they were using AI for some type of analysis. It wasn't really doing the work. It was just helping people quantify the work. or even in some cases qualify, right? There's a lot of AI that would help provide some insights on reporting of how many calls you had that were, closes versus just interest calls. There's one that talks about being able to replicate your closers, and what that, at one point I thought, oh wow, they're actually going to use AI to drive the sales, but what they actually do is just report metrics on what's working with their top closers, and then try to help use that as curriculum for their other sales executives. And so I wasn't seeing a lot of AI being used in the conversations when we started. In 2017, we were kind of looking at the landscape. There was not a lot happening there. There were some chatbots. I would describe chatbots as basic, choose your own adventure stories, where there's kind of
right.
Stories, and you just kind of choose what page you jump to in that story.
Yeah.
But it's not really intelligent conversation. It's just kind of a narrative that's prescribed, and using some basic logic trees helps you navigate it. But usually, if you've interacted with a chatbot, you feel like you're being pushed aside and you get a very impersonal conversation. Our goal with Aktify was to do the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, and I'd say as far as how it powers sales teams, there's so much time spent, at least at most call centers, the sales team is spending 40% of their time literally just in outreach. And it's usually the mundane processes that they're not really hired to do. As a salesperson, your entire goal, if you boil it all down, really is to influence. And your ability to influence is going to be more in a human interaction. So they're still very pivotal in that interaction. But I think AI has been definitely incorporated to automating a lot of the outreach, a lot of the activities that right now we're spending our time on. It'd be the equivalent of going to like construction, lot, and seeing the workers actually use hand tools to screw in screwdrivers, right? You can use a drill today, but commonly we see these processes being manually done in call centers. It's just something that's been overdone and broken for a long time.
No, I can definitely relate to that. And I think one of the other, very interesting things, and maybe you guys can talk specifically to you guys, obviously not talk about anything too proprietary, but can you talk about, I think it's really interesting, the tech stack that you're using, or, what are some of the back end, technologies that you're using to incorporate this kind of UX UI that, isn't just a chatbot, going down basically kind of an IVR road, right? And I want to talk about the UX UI as well, but can you guys just kind of, at a high level, kind of talk about how you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah, and I'll even go one level higher than that. In 2007, I had a company that was directly trying to create positive experiences between brands and consumers, and we were doing it through different interactions of apps and websites and things like that. But really, if we'd tried to start Aktify back in the early 2000s or even 2015, it would not have worked. For the same reason that an AI EV company wouldn't exist in 2014. There just wasn't enough technology yet in the AI space to drive a car without a human. We're now on the cusp of when it's actually viable to do that. And I would say the same thing for conversational AI. There were a lot of things that had to be released from Google and Facebook and Amazon and a lot of other thought leaders in the space in order to create kind of the foundation of what we've built here at Aktify. And those products were released in 2017, 2018. And so if we had started ahead of that, the results of what we're driving would not have been attainable.
Right.
So that's the first way to kind of think of it, is that we do use some things out of open source code coming out of the major AI thought leaders. We take that and then we wrap our own thought process around it, our own what we call collective intelligence, which is our data science team working with machine learning engineers, working with research experts. We have 4 PhDs on our team that dig into the neuroscience, the linguistics, the emotional response of the consumer. And that all feeds into what we think of as our expert knowledge base, which filters up into the conversations. And so, we're using the things that we can from the market. I have a philosophy that, don't build something that already exists, because you're not creating new value when you do that. To create just another hammer, to use the analogy earlier, another hammer or another wrench or another screwdriver isn't adding new value to the market. But if we can find a new way to accomplish that with new practices, new philosophies, new disciplines, you start to create new value. So we take things we can from Facebook and Google in a very approved format, whether it's licensed or open source, and then we add our own layer. Everything we build is on a Lambda architecture, and we build up from there. So I can talk a little bit more about our supercomputer.
Not to interrupt you, but can I ask you then, how are you guys? So when you take the machine learning, when you take kind of this AI, wrap it around your kind of proprietary thought process, how is it different, right, than what you kind of talked about with that chatbot that's just kind of doing the pick a path. Can you just kind of differentiate, those?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of interesting.
So it's a totally different approach. With the chatbot, you basically write pre-scripted responses. And now all you're trying to do is match a response to a question or an inquiry of some kind that came in from the prospect. What we actually do is compose all of our responses on the fly. So we have linguistical experts who can take a sentence and figure out 1,000 ways you can say that. And then we respond accordingly based off of the intent. So everything we do is based off of intents. And so we have a team of what we call NLU, or natural language understanding analysts, that take all of the inbound texts from the prospects and we map those to intents. And then the system replies back with a scripting on the fly of a way to respond to that intent and satisfy the question. We're now working on multi-intent, where if you are having a text conversation between two humans, it's not uncommon for a human to have 3 or 4 intents in one block of text. And so we have to pick that apart, analyze it, and understand how to respond with 2 or 3 responses to those intents intelligently. And so that would stump any chatbot. If you don't believe me, try asking Siri, what's the weather in Detroit? Should I wear a jacket? And what color poncho should I wear? And I guarantee you the response will be less than what you would expect.
Right.
And so
right.
It's hard to ask those multi-loaded questions, whereas our system, which we affectionately name DOT, short for Dorothy, but DOT is our virtual agent that is learning more and more every day about how to respond to those multi-intents.
And for you guys, and I probably should have kind of prefaced this, so you guys are focusing right now on the sales aspect, focusing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, especially in the SMS and the texting, right? That type of interaction. That's kind of where you guys are playing, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Real quick before I get into something, can you guys? I think another thing that's really interesting to me, be very interesting to listeners, is kind of all the time, kind of put into the UX UI, right? And again, we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but I think, that's always been that's the breakup right now with what's going on. And I think with some of the things that you talked about, just from a testing standpoint, or I think it'd be very interesting to how you guys kind of say, hey, that works, that's good, or this doesn't work. Can you just, briefly kind of talk about that?
Yeah, just a commentary on UX. I believe the best technology is as close to invisible as possible, which might sound counterintuitive. Usually you think, oh, technology, that means a big, 80-inch flat screen TV or awesome surround sound system. You want to kind of show off this awesome technology you have. Back in the 80s, I thought it was cool when my brother came home with the, 8-component, he could play everything from cassette tapes to 8 tracks to vinyls to CDs. And it was like amazing, right? More components meant awesome, right? More awesome, more impressive. But today you look at these flat screen devices that are almost, there's almost no buttons anymore. And it's just this flat piece of glass that can do all of the things that, we used to be able to do with camcorders and cameras and Walkman and everything else. It's all in one device. And so I think, smartphones have kind of got us accustomed to making things more and more invisible and just more, it's adapting more to us. But in a similar fashion, if you think of like Amazon, if you were to place an order on Amazon, that package just shows up on your doorstep tomorrow. You don't think about all of the robots, all of the logistics, all of the vehicles that it took to get that package from a button tap on your smartphone to your doorstep. And in the same way, we don't really want the consumer to have to think about all of the intelligence behind the scenes. They're not to pull levers and push buttons to have a conversation. They're just conversing like they would with a human. And we're trying to get as close to that human-to-human interaction as possible by making the technology do all the heavy lifting.
And let's talk about that for a second here too. And again, if you guys don't use this term, I know I was talking to you guys in our pre, and you guys were talking about garbage leads, right? Or, the leads that, in a sales contact center, they're not converting. They can't get a hold of. There's no connection. So you guys basically in your process would take these kind of quote unquote garbage leads and have kind of the AI do the talking for it, right? And try to generate the kind of the warm lead or the next interaction with the human. That's kind of like how you guys, did I sum that up relatively okay?
You did.
All right. So a couple of things come to mind with this is, number one is, in my contact center, we do some outbound when it comes to cell phones and SMS, there's obviously compliance issues. So a twofold question. Number one is how do you guys talk to your clients, your customers about making sure that obviously you're meeting all the compliance goals? And I guess the next question is, are there things that we should be thinking of, the industry, myself, other contact centers, to kind of plan for what's coming, right? To make sure that, we're ahead of the game when it comes to compliance for using this type of technology.
Yeah, no question. I mean, there's some basics, and I'll let Kreg add some in here, but I think about it through the lens of defensibility. Do you actually have true consent from these consumers to be able to have these communications? Have they opted in? And we do some pretty vigorous testing and vetting of even the clients that we choose to work with to ensure that we're not bringing in leads or lists into our system and ingesting those that haven't properly had the authorization and have essentially opted in for communication. So obviously with TCPA, there's certain regulations and guidelines that have to be abided by the clients we support, but from a vendor standpoint as well. We have our agreements and our business associates agreements to ensure, hey, we are going to maintain this kind of quality and caliber of client. And that means that they've actually received an opt-in, one that is notated somewhere, ideally on their website or in some kind of system, to ensure that in an occasion we needed to pull that, they would have a certifiable record that, Tom actually did say, I'm interested in these services and I'm agreeing specifically to the SMS communications or other communication methods.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is there other things that we should be looking at, when we are doing lead gen campaigns? I mean, obviously, we want our forms to say specific things, but, can you give any kind of credence to how that would help with that?
Yeah, we recommend language that anybody should put on their website. If you're creating new leads from your own website and people are opting in, we give recommendations on how you should phrase that so that you're in the clear to send texts and make phone calls to that number. At a high level, I'd say it's never going to be illegal for a business to reply to an interested customer. Because if that's the case, you won't be able to order a pizza, right? You've got to be able to make a phone call or send a message or fill out a form online and be able to get correspondence back from that business saying your pizza's ready, or, we have a quote for you on your life insurance policy. There has to be a way for them to communicate with you. What the government is trying to do is protect you from being hounded, right? Nobody wants calls from unsolicited inquiries, right? Nobody wants to have solicitors knocking on their door unless they invited them over, right? And so that's the goal, is to get back to that essence. And if somebody is opting in and allowing the brand that we work with, whether it's a smart home company or an insurance company, as long as they give express written consent for that company to reach out and text or call in response to their inquiry, then we're in the clear. And so that's the thing we want to protect. Now, what Kreg Daly also spoke about here was just the ability that we can even go back a level deeper to scrub the list. So we run a query against the known litigators database. We run against the do not call, do not contact database. We also look for anything that looks fraudulent. So whether someone just did a keyboard mash of letters for their email address, or they scrambled some phone number in there, we can detect that using AI. So we actually do all that list cleansing as a pre-step using AI as well. And we're able to filter out about 20% of the bogus leads before they ever come into our system.
Yeah, that's a huge value add just right there. That's
pretty
awesome.
We've actually had TCPA lawyers recommend Aktify to their clients as a way to protect them from future lawsuits that they're getting, independent of Aktify.
No, very, very cool. That's, and it's you can't really mess around with that. So it's awesome that you guys really have taken it that serious. Let's talk about kind of high level, maybe even outside of Aktify, and where do you guys see, this, everybody has their own opinion on conversational AI, right? And Google, when Google was it 2 or 3 years ago, and they did their, calling the hairstylist, right? And having that full conversation, where do you see, I don't know, maybe say the next couple of years, and then, future, from this AI standpoint, and you guys live, eat, and breathe this technology every single day. I mean, where are we going with it? Because again, people say we're there now, which obviously I think we're in agreement that we're not, but we're getting better. But where do you see kind of the end game with this?
From my perspective, the reason I'm excited about Aktify and the reason I started in the first place was because when I'm 60 years old and having to interface with my doctor, I want it to be a better experience than it is today. I think, we're moving to a situation where a lot of people are more comfortable texting than they are talking on the phone. And just the back and forth you have to do to try to schedule a doctor's appointment or get a quote on your insurance. It's very frustrating. And I personally want to have a better future when I'm in my retirement years. I don't want to be dealing with call centers that are offshore or B grade talent in a call center somewhere that just gives me attitude. I would rather talk to a highly likable machine that is much more contextually knowledgeable, more pleasant, more responsive, more dependable than a human. And I believe we can get there. And as a side note, these are jobs people don't want anyway. Nobody wants to work at a call center for $10 an hour for 40 hours a week. And just like people who, nobody wanted to really go plant crops and harvest them anymore. We now have tractors that do that. I think a lot of these lower tier jobs get replaced by machines. And that's all we're talking about here. It's just our machines are getting more advanced, but I actually don't believe they replace jobs. They just move human jobs up the food chain and allow us to have a more pleasant lifestyle where we can have podcasts and talk like this as opposed to be working, in a sweaty job in a dirt field somewhere.
In kind of the short term, though, I mean, I know we talked a little bit more on, or talked of kind of the agent empowerment versus the agent kind of takeover, right? And I agree with you. I think, if we want to talk, and I don't know, maybe even 10 years it's a shorter term than that. I hear you, and I kind of agree with kind of what you're saying. When it comes to the short term, I think this agent empowerment and what you guys are kind of doing with that, and even on the customer service side with Agent Assist and those types of things. Can you kind of just, maybe talk a little bit about that and kind of how you see the now, right? And what kind of technologies or how we're helping to empower instead of really take over, because it's just not there yet.
Yeah, and maybe even to speak about it from the clients that approach us, Tom, they're very interested in keeping their staff there. They literally just want to make it more efficient. Going back to the construction metaphor, they just want to give everybody drills as to speed up the work and allow for more work to be done. And to Craig's earlier point, as a sales rep, we want to be on the phone, helping potential prospects become customers and influence those conversations, and not do the nitty gritty activities to actually generate those conversations. So with several of our clients, again, that nearly half the individual's time is being spent on that outreach. And then we're literally shrinking that in half and qualifying a lot of or scrubbing a lot of these prospects, these garbage leads, into qualified conversations, and then routing them to the organizations and allowing the sales reps to do exactly that. But we very much live in the empowerment camp today, and do see that happening here in the foreseeable future. And how do we just magnify the effectiveness of an individual, whether it's service, sales, and then disqualify or answer, if we can, just some of the frequently asked questions where a human truly isn't necessary.
Do you guys see your business, or do you see a shift in a lot of maybe conversational AI companies that are starting with, this is kind of the what we want to solve, the problem we want to solve, but the technology is so badass, right? It's awesome.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just, and it's all encompassing. I mean, do you see, a roadmap with you guys getting into customer service and customer support and those types of things?
Definitely.
100%. Yeah, we get dragged into it already, and obviously
I bet you do.
We love it. But the power of AI is exactly that. What else can this do? How else can it converse and solve, different inefficiencies along the process of the client communication? And as every call center geek knows, there's hundreds of opportunities to improve processes there.
Yeah. The core.
Do you guys have any? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have any hardcore numbers, like conversion numbers, or I mean, anything you'd want to share with maybe a quick case study or something on how things have you helped in the power that this thing has? Yeah,
and it's relevant to the comment that's been talked about a little bit here, garbage leads. So I actually think that's a little bit of a wrong way to think about it. There are garbage leads, right? There are definitely leads that are like keyboard mashed, made up phone numbers, people that are just trying to catch you and sue you. Those are garbage leads. But I had this belief just from seeing event interest and those who actually ended up buying a ticket. It's not that the others weren't interested in the event. It's just they didn't line up with their timing, with their communication pattern. whether they were available that night, whether they get, a babysitter lined up, or they could get a date, right? There's a lot of reasons why people don't end up buying a ticket to an event they are in fact interested in. And so when I saw one of our clients, I saw a report on Salesforce.com on their blog that showed that 87% of leads went to waste. And what they meant is that 87% of leads never got on the phone. And Salesforce was reporting this kind of, oh, this is the status quo. This is acceptable. If you're in this realm, you're doing okay. And like, that was like haunting to me. Like, we have an entire industry that's okay with an 87% fail rate. And I called one of our clients up and I said, hey, is this true? Do you guys really have 87% of your leads never getting on the phone with one of your reps? And I said, actually, we wish you were that good. We have about 96%. And what struck my mind at that time was, in marketing, we used to always say, oh, 50% of your marketing budget is going to waste. You just don't know which 50%. But in this case, 96% of your marketing lead gen budget is going to waste. You just don't know which 96%, which is crazy. I mean, it's just crazy that there's a business built on a 4% success rate. But this is a successful, multi-billion-dollar business that was living off of that 4%. And early on, I said, well, why don't I see what I can do? Just send me some of those quote unquote garbage leads or those stalled leads, and let me see what I can do. And early on, they were paying us a flat $5,000 a month. And they said, this isn't really working. And it's because we were giving them back these revived leads and saying, hey, these are the ones that are still interested in, just call them up. They still couldn't get them on the phone. And what I realized at that point was it's because all they knew how to do was call. They just kept pounding them with phone calls. And when they didn't answer, they threw it out as a garbage lead. And so that's where I said, well, you know what? Why don't we do it on performance? What is this worth to you every time that we deliver a conversation that ends up buying? They kind of backed in the numbers, and we landed at $650. And at $650, every time they closed a deal, they were happy to pay us if we would take a lead out of what they would think of as a waste basket or a dead lead and bring it back and turn it into a live call. Well, we have revived more than 34 million in new revenue for that business. So 34 million by moving that 96% fail rate to like a 92% fail rate, right? And we recovered another, 30 million plus for them. So that's just one example. But that's where I don't believe it was ever really a closer problem. It wasn't a sales problem. In my mind, it was a connection problem. You just were not connecting with these prospects on their terms. And that's why they were thrown out as garbage leads.
Yeah. And I think to your point too, there's so much going on now, even on the outbound world, right? With people blocking things and with just, when your reps are calling, and, we have those discussions all the time on specific kind of algorithms that you kind of say of how many times you're calling and when. So, for you guys to kind of take that to, 10 times kind of the quote unquote algorithm that, a normal call center is trying to do to contact reps. I think it's just the beginning. I think that's the most fascinating thing, right? I mean, you guys are doing this right now with where AI is from that standpoint and showing those results. I mean, what's going to happen in, 3, 4, 5, 6 years? That's pretty exciting. And
Absolutely.
Really, I think to tie the customer support and those types of things into it too. It should be you guys got a lot of work. It should be fun.
Need your help.
Well, guys, hey, I appreciate it. Before we go, do you want to just, maybe talk to the audience, tell, you guys are definite for sure, need to be followed, guys, with all the things that you're doing. So, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter, let people know kind of where they can get a hold of you and follow you. And, hopefully we can build that up too.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm just on LinkedIn, just Kreg Peeler, KregPeeler on LinkedIn.
Yep. And mine's Kreg Daly, CraigDaly. And then our company name, Aktifys, as you can see there, spelled on Craig's shirt, and dot behind us, AKTIFY.
And the website just aktify.com, correct?
Yes,
it is. Yep.
Okay. Well, hey guys, thank you very much. I mean, I think that's not only, really getting into the technology and the things that you're doing, but kind of having that conversation on the state of the industry, I think is very helpful to a lot of people who are listening here. I know that there's a ton of interest in what you guys are doing and what that piece of the call center industry is doing. So again, I really do appreciate it. And I'm excited to see what you guys are going to peel off here in the future. No pun there, Kreg.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tom, and appreciate what you're doing for the industry. And we love to optimize. So any of the call centers out there, let us know how we can help you optimize your process and recapture some of that lost revenue.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks,
thank you.
Tom.
Bye.